What's going on? It's your boy DameSmiff. So we in here again with another video. And so if you enjoy these conversations, make sure you hit the like button. That way we can let other people know what's going on YouTube with the latest content and that these conversations are dope. And then also hit the subscribe button so you can catch up on my latest upload. So today's topic is don't make sense of the devil. Now, I first heard this in passing. I don't even know who the first person was that said it out their mouth that I heard it, but I heard it again recently, like I think like a year ago. And it for some reason is a very rare statement that I hear, but when I hear it, it hits hard. And I'll go through what I think this statement means and kind of like feel it out with my common sense, of course. And then we'll react to a video of a conversation between a group of adults where they kind of realize that they shouldn't try and make sense of the devil. So, what do I think this means? And why does it relate to musicians? I will say this. For a lot of musicians, we have this issue it's a normal issue to have, but we have this issue with our real life, like reality, competing with the world we're building. And you're probably like, what does that even mean, right? But all that really means is that there happens to be a disconnect between the world you believe you live in and the world that exists around you. And that's part of growing up, right? And so it's important for musicians because our job usually for the tasks set ahead of us is to kind of reflect the world, not shape it, because that's all of our jobs is together, right? So when the world is terrible and we make you dance through the terrible experience of the world. We're not supposed to show you a world that is not real and make you feel like the world is not terrible, because it sometimes is. And if the world is great, we should make you dance while the world is great. And we should show you that the world is great and it's a great place to live in. It's a beautiful place you should be in. So dance. The issue I have is that, both fans and artists, because we're humans, we struggle with trying to make sense of the world we live in while navigating it, and then trying to either project our ideas on the world or use the ideas we have to kind of influence our decision making. And that's where we'll see problems, right? I'll say that to make it easy. So the topic is a bit dark in the sense of we're going to talk about some things that we generally would not like to participate in. Generally, we have a stigma for. Generally, we think negatively about. But the reason it's dark is because usually the things we say we would not like to do in the world affect other people or affect, the world. So things like cleaning up after yourself, right? We don't want to leave a mess because let's say if we pass away or if we leave the room, the next person that comes in will just have a mess to deal with. And that's not cool, right? We don't want to do that. And the reason we don't want to do that is because the valuable thing that we all share is time. And so if you leave a mess for somebody else to clean up before they get to utilize, let's say, the room that you're leaving, they now have to waste time that you took and have taken from them or have just wasted for them, right? On the other hand of it, we have our experience, right? Our happiness, which is not really a real thing to value, but our happiness is important to us. So like if you're going into a hotel room and it's not spotless, your happiness may not be perfect, but it may be affected. And so that's where we have things like hospitality, customer service, and then, those cool words and things like that. But it's all to kind of help us understand that, look, we want to have a nice experience, pleasant experience. And so on the other hand, we have people who disregard this, or I would just say do not care about this aspect of life. For example, if they have a bad experience, they won't complain, not for the simple fact of it being too much effort to complain. It's just simply they don't care. They don't care if they have a bad experience, if you have a bad experience, or if they created a bad experience. They simply do not care, right? Now, for a lot of people in the world, what I just said is controversial. For a lot of people, they believe that people do care, but they're making mistakes or a misstep. And so this is where, as musicians and artists, we tend to struggle with the world. We try to take the things that we believe in our heart, show it to the world, and then when the world reacts in a way we disregard, we kind of reject or regret or resent, not regret. We resent the world that we live in. And for me, I never had that feeling, but I got to see people go through it as musicians. And it was interesting because they're not necessarily in control of the thing that they're angry about. So it could be something as crazy as like, oh, the government, right? But even though they would make up valid arguments, they would make very valid viewpoints and perspectives on the issues they see in the world, they can't control it. And so it only further frustrates them. And I'm pointing out musicians because it started to bleed into how they created their music. Instead of trying to make music that maybe they themselves felt good about, they started to make music to kind of push an agenda or to make a statement, to teach a lesson or to show a message, right? And this is, beyond like making gospel music or something like that. Like this particular musician was actually trying to like almost sell you on the idea of an agenda or maybe, influence your ideas and thinking versus putting sounds together to reflect perhaps the issue he sees in the world. And so when I noticed that in musicians, it's gotten a lot easier to see it in everyday people. So sometimes I'll see everyday people talk about the exact same issues musicians talk about, or maybe they have gotten wind of a new issue or political event because of their favorite musician or celebrity. And they would think with the exact same logic of that person that exposed them of the issue in the world. Now, I'm being vague as far as issue because what we're about to explore might not be something you're thinking of in your head. So I'm trying to just relay the logic behind trying to make sense of the devil. Okay. And so for musicians, this can be important to understand. Maybe you won't ever get it, or maybe you won't ever apply it properly in your career, but it's important to understand because we will be in situations where we have to make decisions, and the thing we will have to lean on will either be, and I'll be truthfully and honest, it will either be the options you have in front of you, or you will have to lean to your teachings, and you can't try and make sense of the devil. Okay. Meaning you could have a situation where, let's say on the fantasy side, right? You got to deal with the devil. The devil's offering you something. Everything comes with a cost. That's a principle. But if you didn't have that principle that I just said, you wouldn't know that everything comes with a cost. And I think that's the part that many musicians and average people forget, that you live in a world where if that principle didn't exist for you to hear, if no one lined it up and repeated it enough for it to affect those around you, for me to have it in my head and repeat it for you, it wouldn't exist. Okay. And so the effects and consequences that come with that principle not existing, you would be vulnerable to. So if you got to deal with the devil and you never knew that everything comes with a cost, you may think you're getting something for free. You may think you deserve something. You may think you've earned something. Okay. And feel free to, challenge me on this in the comments, because this is, like I said, I'm just using my brain. I'm just using my common sense when I hear the phrase, don't make sense of the devil. Okay. So if you find yourself in a situation where you feel you have to make a big choice, like a deal with the devil, right? If you find yourself in a situation like that and you have one of these principles, it wouldn't be wise to try and make sense of why that principle would fail. Okay, it would be wise to kind of just go with the principle. And I'm saying that to be vague because I've heard this in another way where the content creator's channel we're about to watch, he mentioned one time, and I've heard it before in other instances. Um, Actually, I've heard Malice from Pusha T talk about this. I should actually pull that up next. Malice from Pusha T's Clips group. Wow, I am butchering that name. Malice from Clips with his brother Pusha T. He mentioned that whenever you think of, for him, he's a Christian. Whenever he thinks of the word of God, it's perfect, right? And for a lot of people, the controversial statement in that, or the controversial part of that, was the word perfect. And it's because a lot of people assume that the world is supposed to be, you know, confusing, dark, and you haven't figured it out, and who knows, who cares, and why do you care, and all this stuff, right? There's a line of thought that goes with that, right? So what happens when you have something like a religion or a principle of thought or even a government, or a culture, you begin to kind of like lay the foundation of a large group of people's experience, right? So let's say, for example, men and women, right? People believe in gender roles, some people do not. But what happens is that you create a general experience for people that do or do not believe in gender roles. If you take something like high school cliques or like friend groups and things like that, we generally know what happens with the jocks to the nerds and so forth and things like that. We generally know, right? And so if you try to move outside of these parameters, like if you go to high school and you don't join the band, you never join a debate class, you weren't with the cool guys, you weren't with the pretty girls, you weren't with the nerdy kids, you didn't do anything, you just kind of don't get a result that you can expect. And most of the time, you'll just experience the negative result of everything, because the positive results of most things take effort. And without effort of any of the things you're trying to do, you're not going to get the results that you'd like, which would be the positive ones. Okay. So if you're still following me, that basically means that there's going to be a time where you have to make a decision on your life, whether it be something as big as, you know, marriage, to what song you're going to write. When you're facing a decision like that, there are things in the world that help you make that decision, that don't need you to think, that don't need you to try and make sense of it. They're bigger than you. That's all that means, okay? And so when I personally think of this phrase, don't make sense of the devil, I realize that this phrase only exists because so many people try to make sense of the devil. So many people look at maybe the evils in the world, or try to look at maybe someone betraying them. Maybe your girlfriend cheated on you or something in college, and you try to look at the world and figure out like, all right, how do I change this? How do I make sure this doesn't happen? How do I make sure people avoid this? And because of that, you probably failed. You and many other people probably failed. And so thus someone came up with this statement: don't make sense of the devil. And all it does is it just alleviates you of the pressure of thinking like, what am I doing wrong? What should I figure out what I'm doing? And why does this relate to musicians? Because for a lot of musicians, we will be doing things that we're just kind of saying yes to or saying no to without any thought and any intention. We will argue with things and debate things that don't really have any effect on your life because you cannot control it, but it is something that maybe is provocative for the way you live your lifestyle. And so, to give you a realistic example before we go into this reaction video, is that you could be a musician who, let's say you're a vocalist, right? And I've talked about this before. If you're a vocalist or a general musician, and after a show, someone offers you an illicit substance, don't make sense of the devil. What would that lead you to do in that situation where after a show, let's say, somebody you are close to, you relate to, they're happy. This is a great moment for you. This is a good environment. You're successful, and they offer you an illicit substance to use. Don't make sense of the devil. Now, the reason I'm not actually giving an answer is because for some of you, you've already been in that situation. For some of you musicians and you artists, you've already been offered something. You've already taken something. Or maybe even you've already suffered from, a choice, an option granted to you, exposed to you. And maybe you didn't have one of those principles I mentioned earlier in your, I guess you could say, in your arsenal to protect you. Something like everything comes at a cost. So if we take that principle right there, everything comes at a cost, and someone offers you an illicit drug, let's say it's a drug, you can just think of one in your head. Let's say it's a drug you have never used before. What is the cost? I have two questions. What is the cost of you taking this drug after a successful show, after knowing you did everything you're supposed to do it, to get the success you just earned? What is the cost of using this drug? And then the second question is, are you willing to pay that cost? Right? And so let's say something like addiction, right? Something as simple as addiction. We've talked about on this channel that when it comes to something like addiction, you kind of don't notice it until it's too late, right? You'll notice you're addicted, you won't notice that you're becoming addicted more often than not. So then when we think of something like that, what about if it's something that's not an illicit drug? What if it's something like a type of woman or a type of man, or maybe it's a certain environment, a certain ideology and things like that? What if somebody offers you a certain ideology? Don't make sense of the devil. What if somebody offers you, or a woman offers herself? Don't make sense of the devil. What if for my ladies out there, you're a singer or you're an artist, and I have, some female artists, they hit me up to collaborate sometimes, and a lot of the collaborations I offer, I don't ask for money, I don't ask for anything like that outside of like, let's book some studio time, of course. But yeah, like when, let's say if a male artist or producer suggests an inappropriate offer, don't make sense of the devil. What principles would you lean on to protect yourself from the decision you make? Because let's say some of you want to go through with these things. Let's say you take the illicit drug. Let's say you like that girl. And let's say you love this ideology somebody laid out to you for, like, you want to be a credit card scammer, or you want to be a trapper or something like that, right? They laid this out and it makes sense to you. And suddenly you want to say yes. Are you willing to pay the cost for what comes with it? And what is the cost? Because sometimes the cost is not something that, most people are willing to part with. And what that could mean is, like, let's say somebody's buying a painting, right? Most people aren't willing to pay $10,000 for a painting. But you may see the value in that painting to where you're like, no, I can see that this is an asset. This is $10,000 now, but it's going to be worth, 10x by the time, whatever time comes over. So if you can see things and it makes sense a certain way, how do you know you're making the right decision if you don't have these principles that you need in order to protect yourself? Something as simple as I'm gonna keep reiterating it because there's a lot of principles you can have. It's a lot of versions, but the main principle we're showing in this video is that everything comes with a cost. And then the questions we ask ourselves is, what is the cost and are we willing to pay it? So let's get into the reaction video. That's my little rant about trying to make sense of the devil and figuring out what it is. But to kind of give you some familiarity into the clip we're about to watch, the clip we're about to watch is actually a panel from the Island Gal Q Girl show, and it's basically a panel of people, and they're coming together, you know, on a late night conversation. They're chilling, they're hanging out, and they're gonna have a conversation about popular events, maybe news, maybe politics, a lot of different things. And one of the topics that happened to come up was this, I guess you can say, social media influencer Lil Tay, who when she turned 18 had made, I believe this is what I think actually happened, her agency happened to touch $1 million through OnlyFans. Now, for those of you who don't know and you're living under a rock, this is a girl who looks really young. She's been popular on the internet since she was underage legally in this country. And this is only a popular controversial topic because it brings up what I was saying, where people believe that there is an issue with how this girl was raised. There's an issue with what this girl believes is right. And there's an issue with who is participating with what this girl is offering. And so when you lay it out, as I've laid it out, the issue that the controversy that this brings up for many people is that all three of these things do not make sense. We don't know why parents would raise this little girl this way. We don't know why this little girl is acting this way. And we don't know why people would participate in this circus, okay? And because we don't know why, the controversy is now trying to make sense of it. So when people make sense of it, it's now moved from the little girl. It's now moved from the people and men and women who would pay to see an 18-year-old. That is pretty fucking young. On OnlyFans doing whatever she's doing, right? This idea that this website has people cooking and, you know, doing vacations and stuff. When you look at the people cooking and doing vacations and, you know, doing comedy and stuff like that, the comedy people are not active on OnlyFans. It's a placeholder real estate page for them just to say they're on there. And most of the OFTV models that are on there, they're not necessarily interactive and actually on there. So that's why, in my personal opinion, I don't know if this is fact, I think this Lil Tay girl made $1 million through her marketing or talent agency and not necessarily through some kind of true content value. I think what happened was they marketed that if you wanted to see a young girl turn 18, oh God, and do something salacious on what would typically be seen as an adult site, meaning adult content site, this girl turning 18, then they had a waiting list for these people to join. Now, the people that join clearly are being shamed. And then the other side of the conversation is, why would this girl's parents sign her up for this and allow this to occur? Because a lot of people believe that once you're 18, at least in this side of the world, they believe once you're 18, you are no longer your parents' responsibility, which is going to be another video where we're seeing parents getting charged for the bad decisions of their kids. But a lot of people believe that because she's 18, she is now free range for the world, meaning like she can do whatever she wants. We can do legally whatever we want to her, and it's really up to whatever she allows, right? But the controversy comes into, well, what would her parents be leading this young child to be doing when they turn 18? Like, for example, if you're a parent and your kids, you know, if you're a new parent or you have kids that are like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, what do you expect them to be doing in this world when they turn 18? And so for this girl, she happened to make $1 million, which I believe she probably only made like a good 400,000 off of that, honestly. They probably have a racket at for legal fees to figure out who's actually signing up for this. But the issues that come with this conversation for most people is that the conclusions people are landing on shine a negative light on the people you're having a conversation with. And so all that means is that when someone has this conversation about Lil Tay, who's 18 years old, making $1 million on an adult site after petitioning for men to join, or I keep saying men, but it could be anybody, to join her subscription after her parents made her a social media virality star. The conclusions that people land on, it's making people kind of shame each other instead of the actual issue. So for example, you'll have some people say Lil Tay is a victim, which could be a valid argument, meaning that she has no clue what she's doing. This girl could definitely be walking right into something that she may never come back from, and only she will know. Or on the other hand, some people are saying she knows exactly what she's doing and she's going to get exactly what she wants. She got $1 million and everything like that. So for both sides of that argument, one group would say, well, since you see her as a victim, you must see her as weak, infantile, or slow, to put to a lack of terms, and then being exploited by those around her, that of which we need to kind of remove her from the issue and then focus on the greater issue, is that we need to protect her from the issue. On the other hand of the spectrum, it seems that the argument seems to be that, well, since you see her as a participant, then you need to address the issue of the participants in general, which are going to be, in general, more so the people signing up to see this 18-year-old on OnlyFans. And the reason they have that as a valid argument is because there's way more of those people who sign up to get her this $1 million than there were girls offering this deal, right? And so compare this situation to another adult star, Bonnie Blue, who's offering like multiple men to make scenes with her at once. There's way more of those men saying yes to that deal than there are women offering that deal. So that's the only reason they have a valid argument there. And on the other side, they have a valid argument where, you know, you could just be coerced or you could be a victim. So those are the two opposing points we're dealing with in this conversation. And we're going to pull up the video now. Now that you have general context of the entire conversation, at least on this topic, now we're going to get into the part where I said they've laid out each other's arguments, but they're starting to have a conversation about how the arguments are presented. Okay. So one person doesn't like that. They think that Lil Tay is a victim. Another person thinks that because she's a victim, we shouldn't care as much, or we should, you know, have a different mindset on this. So we're going to just explore it, and we're just going to see what they say here. Let me check the speed real quick. Okay, cool. Because we don't want to, you know, wind up watching for too long. But let's check this out. Before we start, let me scooch Heems over. I look cute today. I want you to see my face. And let's get it. Let's go.
You can have an educated guess.
Do you know how many people get released, or how many people is actually in jail for being accused of something that they didn't do? You know how many girls are vindictive and they actually say somebody did something to them?
Okay, so we can stop right here. Honestly, real talk. That is actually a argument from one side of this, is that there are people who weaponize the, I guess, vulnerable side of their victimhood. And so it's not just a woman thing. Like, I've seen it in hip hop a lot. A lot of hip hop guys, they talk really, really tough, like really tough, like so tough. I'd be like, you know, he can hit you for what you just said. But yeah, a lot of rappers will talk really, really tough. And then when it's time to confront whoever they're mad about, they'll get hit or maybe get shot or something bad happened to them. And then they'll tell the rest of the world that it shouldn't have happened to them. And because it shouldn't have happened to them, Now they're going to utilize all the resources, whether it's the legal system or whether it's the streets, to exact revenge. And instead of them just being quiet in the beginning or just avoiding the situation and de-escalating it, this is the outcome, right? And so he's using this as a moment to point out that there are opportunities in people utilizing, I guess you could say, your tastes, your sensibilities. So, for example, there are guys that like young girls, and there are girls that know that and they use that against them. It's not right. It's not right at all, but it is a thing, right? And so, him using that here is what he's using to say that many of these people are not as honest as you would like to think, right? That's many of them, not all of them, but many of them. So you want to kind of comb through what they're saying a little bit, which on the other side of the argument could be that it A, takes too long and is too cumbersome, but then B, we don't necessarily have a kind of like a sales script. We don't have a true way to get to that result. Like, we don't know how to tell someone's being bitter without, like, I guess, red paint on their hands, You know
how many guys probably died in prison because of something that they didn't do? How would you ever be able to tell that?
And that's pretty much what I was saying. You won't be able to tell.
So you're telling me you can't make an educated guess that's saying that there's more likely that there's more men out there that have done SAs or
no, I couldn't.
Okay, and what Sir is doing over here in the blue, I don't think he knows he's doing this. But he's asking a question. To a question. Well, he's not to a question, but he's asking a question. And I've started to kind of like practice this. When you're asking a question, you should kind of affirm yourself that you don't know the answer and you need one. Okay. And he's saying the question with a tone that, in my opinion, is sarcastic, as if he has the answer and we should all know it. And it's wild to him that you're not just saying it, right? So this is why I think he doesn't know he's doing it. Instead of him saying that answer to whatever he's about to expound as a question, which is, yes, you're supposed to be able to, I guess, identify who's being bitter. He's acting as if it's crazy you don't know, instead of actually addressing the argument.
Crimes. We see it happening even with the famous people today. We seen it happen with Diddy. We seen it happen with Jay. We seen it happen with Tory Lanez. We see guys get convicted and thrown under the bus, and those are the ones that we know of that have the money to be able to defend themselves.
And this is why it's important for musicians here on this channel, because he's mentioning a lot of celebrities and things like that. But this happens, in general. But he's mentioning celebrities for a particular reason. What I have noticed, and it's just based on the information presented, is that there is a sense of entitlement to celebrities, and there's a sense of entitlement to musicians after a certain point. Like, I'll give you an example. The rapper Maxo Cream, I really love his music, and it's unfortunate for me because I'm just a civilian, but he is an actual gang member, right? So, like, a lot of his shows and stuff like that, I just will not be safe. I'm not affiliated. I'm just a guy, right? I'm just over there. So when it comes to something like that, I don't feel entitled to feel safe around Max O'Cream, right? That's just me, though. There are people that go to shows of his and assume that his lifestyle will not affect the room that they're sitting in. Now, mind you, that should generally be true, but it's not generally true, because, again, instead of trying to shape the world I live in, I just kind of reflect it, and I don't try to make sense of the devil. Okay. So I know that because of his affiliation, there is a whole other team that probably knows he's here, right? I don't know his past because I only know his music. So maybe he did something, or maybe they did something. There's some kind of thing brewing here, because it has been before I was born, right? And I'm not a part of it. For me to sit in this room as he, because in his music, it's laced all through his music, like his whole lifestyle, his history, and things like that. For me to sit in this room and to yell the things he's yelling alongside him happily, and corral together with him, that doesn't seem a little like it's gonna influence whatever consequences will come of that? Like, but for some people, they feel entitled to be around that simply because this is something that exists. Now, I'm only just saying that out of the side of my mouth. He could definitely have like completely safe shows. It could be fine. Like, it's fine. But that's what comes to my mind because I've actually gone to shows and, they're just regular buildings with people in it. And I felt safe and all that stuff. But it's like, yeah, if something were to go wrong or if there was a beef or if there was a drunk fight or something like that, we would be in it. Like, it wouldn't like, well, they shouldn't do that. Maybe we should figure out, like he's saying, like you should vet who's going to be bitter. We can't really vet who's going to do something crazy in a concert or in a bar or in a club or something like that, right? So you kind of have to mitigate, be proactive and understand what you're doing. So like what I'm saying is with Max O'Cream, I love his shows. I would personally only see him at a festival, or I would only probably see him at like a very, very large event. Unless, he's got some like really, really cool album release party or something going on. But other than that, just a general like, yo, walking down the street, like, nah, probably not gonna happen because I love the music too much. I don't care that much about like the other things, like all of the things that come with the music, So to relay that back to this, their belief is that you should be able to spot somebody like Lil Tay coming a long way and just say no. The problem is that the people who are saying yes to Lil Tay don't have a problem with Lil Tays. They are attracted to Lil Tays. And the sir in the blue is acting as if most people think like him in that they are anti Lil Tays, but they're actually attracted to them. So that's why the argument of her being a victim works from his perspective, because he's assuming that somebody is kind of inventing this environment and it's not her. And for some reason he thinks it's not her. And the only way he will think it's her is if this girl makes it completely obvious, which goes greatly against the type of person that would do that. So this is why the conversation winds up with people arguing with each other and not dealing with the issue, because it's hard to get somebody like that to cooperate and actually solve the issue because they're focused on fixing something that's not necessarily real or something they can't control, which is whether or not this girl is participating or not. Because it's not real that she's a victim. It's not real that she's participating because it's marketing both ways. There's an agency running this little girl's brand. So we have no clue. She could be a complete like puppet for all we know. But the idea that you're approaching this with is not going to work because you're not addressing the actual issue of how the money's landing in their hands.
Got killed in a court of public opinion. So no, I can't make an educated guess because one is too many. One guy being accused is too many. And we can't just have harsher penalties and throw the baby out with the bathwater if even one guy get convicted of something that he didn't do, just so we can make sure that y'all feel good about yourselves and not protecting the people that y'all supposed to be protecting. No, I don't. I can't make an educated guess. No, because I would be assuming. And the fact that we just take a woman's word for it, which is one of the reasons why they had the campaigns of Believe All Women, is one of the reasons why everything is so messed up in the first place.
Before he starts, and generally, most people agree with what he just said. Logically, the issue that comes with this conversation again is how you solve for that, right? Most people would assume that lying is bad, right? Being vindictive is negative, and you don't want to be petty and things like that, right? But there's lying, vindictive, and petty people. So the issue that I think they're trying to solve for is how do lying, vindictive, and petty people get a consequence for harming people or using people. Whereas the other gentleman in the blue, for the lying, vindictive, and petty people, they need a better environment so that they are no longer lying, vindictive, and petty. The only issue that both of them are running into is that to apply either one of them means that you have to deal with lying, vindictive, and petty people. So, in one instance, it's kind of just in these people's nature to be lying, vindictive, and petty. So you'll just be punishing them for who they are, which is why people feel bad, like this man here, who think that you should help people not lie as much, ease people's vindictiveness, and help people not be as petty. And the way you would do that is impossible because those people by nature would not use the tools you given them to no longer lie, be vindictive, and petty. Why am I saying that? Because if you've ever dealt with, like, things that are beyond people's control, like addiction or homelessness or sometimes even love, things don't make sense to them, and they can't because they're not trying to make sense of the thing. They're just experiencing the world, which is why I say don't make sense of the devil. Like, they're experiencing something that they have to kind of just wean off of, and kind of just the world has to give them the consequence they need, which is usually like jail time, pain, suffering, death, and things like that. And I am just explaining that because that's just my perspective. But for some people, they think it's different. They think the thing that's going to change people like this will be, peace, love, hugs, and things like that, which may be true because especially for like young children, I think that's where it really works, which is probably why people feel the way they do about Lil Tay. The 18-year-old part is where the controversy starts to kick in. People see maybe their kids or their nephew and their nieces, or maybe themselves, and they're like, when I was 18, I wouldn't want people to exploit me, not realizing that when they were 18, they were dumb as hell, saying dumbass things and not thinking about any kind of consequence. So there's an issue with just reality being dealt with and trying to shape reality instead of reflecting it.
Question goes about something wrong with men like in 18-year-olds. Did you know there's only like 7 other countries besides the US and Canada that thinks 18-year-olds are not adults?
Why did he say that? That's strange timing, right? And so when we talk about don't make sense of the devil and having certain principles that you lean on, that, they may not be religious. Maybe it's just something your parents said. Maybe your dad said, hey, don't talk back to adults. And that was just something you stuck with. Don't watch your mouth around adults. Why did he throw this principle out in the middle of this conversation when we're talking about this particular 18-year-old making $1 million? Let's go back and see what he says.
The US and Canada, like in 18-year-olds. Did you know there's only like 7 other countries besides the US and Canada that thinks 18-year-olds are not adults?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, big dog.
Yeah, I don't know why he's mentioning this, unless he's trying to make sense of the devil. He's trying to make sense of why someone would say yes to someone under 18. He's trying to make sense of why someone would be okay with something that everybody has something wrong or feels bad about. And you can see it on everybody's face. Like, it ain't fully clicking because their brain's processing, kind of like why I paused. It was like, all right, he said that, but how do you respond to that? Because generally, most people are not looking at people 18 and under sexually, unless you are.
There's only 7 countries in the world that considers 18-year-olds not adults.
Not adults?
18-year-olds are not adults.
What do you mean in that way? I don't understand that.
Meaning 18 is considered adult as far as America and Canada is 21.
In some countries, 11 and 12 is considered.
Yes, right. So what?
So my point is, maybe we're skewed with our view on what is adult really
No,
is.
no.
Well, some
So going back to shaming each other for the solution of this argument, you can see already that they've already pointed out the issue with what he's saying. What I believe he's going to start to say is that if it's legal, it's right. And this is the argument that the agency that's, I guess, booked by Lil Tay's parents That's the line they're teetering in order to provoke controversy, in order to get subscriptions or attention onto this little girl's brand. Because the issue is that if this little girl was selling lip gloss, let's say if she was selling clothes, whatever, you couldn't really make as much of an argument of her birthday, because everybody buys clothes unless you're just buying her stock because you're weird, right? Everybody has lips, so you can buy lip gloss. Who cares? But when it's just her, she's the thing we're selling. Who creates the product? And it's typically the parents, right? So the issue that these people are going to probably start arguing is that her parents and her agency, or whoever is helping this little girl make business deals or business decisions, they're teetering that line between the law and whatever they feel is right for their daughter.
Some states
The Bible also says what a daughter is too.
So you're saying,
no, hold on, wait, let him.
if it was legal, you go ahead and do a 15-year-old at your age.
Yes, please let him finish. He's been
Back-
quiet. This
back
whole
in-
time.
saying.
He's
back
been
in-
quiet. Stop. He's been
Back in
quiet all the
times,
time.
Back in times,
Can you please?
in biblical times, what you
Don't
view
do
as
it.
what you view as children
Yes,
were not children.
Because I don't like
Yes.
PDFs.
Jazz, can you please
Talking.
let him talk?
They were not.
Okay, so I think what's happening here is Anton, who is this gentleman right here, he's basically trying to moderate the conversation to allow him to speak freely. And I think what he's noticing is what I pointed out in real time, is that they're arguing with each other and not the issue. And he's just trying to present his side of the argument, right? And so whatever he's about to say, we have to hear it completely before we start dissenting it. He sounds wild already coming out of it. And his confidence is why we have to get to the end of what he's saying, because there's no way he agrees with the things he's saying in context of the conversation they're having about this 18 little girl making $1 million off of people subscribing to her on an adult site. So the confidence is something that is signaling perhaps to Anton that we need to probably listen to the entire sentiment of what he's saying, because if we don't, he'll just slide back into the darkness, and depending on what he believes, will or will not participate in the very problem we're highlighting with this little girl.
Children.
Tank, can you please?
They were married at an age that you didn't view as an adult.
So, Tank, are you saying what are you saying? Are you saying that what are you saying that the legal age should be?
12.
Whatever the law says in the land.
Okay, so if we were to pause for a second and just think, whatever the law says of the land, that's dangerous on many ways. Because, all right, so look at it this way. Let's bring it back to musicians, right? Let's say the law says you have to make a fraction of a penny per stream. Are you okay with that? So if you make 1 million streams on the song that I was talking in another video, the album I'm working on is so far taking about like 7-8 months, right? You drop your album, your baby, your project, and you make 1 million streams. You throw your little party on Instagram Live or TikTok Live, but you made a fraction of a penny per stream based on the law. Are you okay with that? And if you say yes, please type in the comments why you would be okay with that. And if you're not, please type in the comments why you would not be okay with that. And so the reason that's dangerous is because it doesn't incentivize you to check the law, to update the law, to upgrade the law. For example, musicians, we've been dealing with this royalty rate, ownership issues, and a lot of real estate issues for independent musicians for a very long time. And a part of it comes from complacency. People that just they want to make music and be famous before they get into the boardrooms and go to these meetings and stuff like that. Myself included. Like, I'm doing this for you guys, but like there's more I could be doing. And I think when people have mindsets like this gentleman right here, Mr. Tank, you generally will find people that'll just say, oh yeah, I'll make 1 million streams this year and I'm gonna try really, really, really hard, right? Which is something that they shouldn't turn down doing, making 1 million streams, but we gotta really be honest about the value it brings, right? And so what winds up happening is this gentleman here, Mr. Tank, he can't be honest. He can't be. There's no way, because he's not expressing his true opinions with that sentiment. If you truly believe that because the law says it, it's right, that means if you really do disagree with it, you wouldn't break that law. That can be from slavery to fraud to scamming to all kinds of things that go on in the world because of laws. This is why you want to check laws and have people that update laws and raise kids that understand law, so that way they, when they get older, they understand the laws you made and can update them and things like that.
The law says 12. You would be okay with that?
Yes.
Fucking knew he was gonna do that shit. Go back.
In the land.
So if the law says 12, you would be okay with that?
I don't even like how Island Gal Q presented that question, bro. She presented that question like she just threw it out on the table. Like, here you go. I know you're gonna eat this, you fucking dog. She knew he was gonna answer it that way. And everybody's face is just like, oh, here it comes. Here it is. He's about to fucking say it. And look at him.
Yes.
Jazz is funny, but yeah, his confidence is what makes it problematic. It's not that he's saying it, because I can tell, because he's on a panel and he's separated from the actual issue. He's just using his man brain to just be like 1 + 1 = 2, and that's how laws were made in the beginning. What's supposed to happen is you're supposed to look at 1 + 1 = 2 and then start to add other, numbers and other equations and other signs and things like that. So he's still stuck on the first equation, where it's like, all right, if the law says this, we good, and there's no questioning whether it's right, whether or not you should change it, maybe tweak it. He's not making any type of suggestion or nothing. He said, I am okay with that the way it is. And that's the problem of it, because like I said, with the musicians, if I were to present to you at the beginning of your career, you never dropped a song ever in your life, and I told you every single time somebody hears the entire version of your song, from all the instruments you used, all the musicians you hired in your band, all the producers and engineers, the artwork, the album cover, you built a website, you got a social media site, you publish yourself on a PRO, you got a fucking lawyer on retainer, you got a logo, you even got a hairstyle. But you get a fraction of a penny per use of that product. And you mean to tell me you would just be okay with that for the sake of its existence? I would have to question your intelligence at that point. But like I said, this guy, he's right there at like base level, like, yup, the law says it's right. And you could see everybody's reaction because they're not used to thinking like that. And that's the controversy and the problem. The problem is that because it's allowed, he's going to participate. And everybody else is saying, well, just because it's allowed, I don't have to participate. So therefore, I'm going to shame those that participate. But you can't, this is the controversy. You can't shame him if you allow him to participate. So how do you stop him from participating? And usually those solutions are what most lawmakers have to deal with in general.
Tank.
The Bible says follow the law of the land.
Stop.
The Bible says follow the law of the land.
So, and then he's also confusing government from religion. He keeps saying the Bible says, and then he's going to the government's law of the land. I don't know if he's aware he's doing that, but again, it's problematic because he can't land on a solution to either protecting this 18-year-old from people exploiting her for $1 million or preventing this 18-year-old from exploiting others for $1 million. He's not landing on a solution because of this
Are
And the
you
Bible
serious, bro?
and the Bible says
Jail.
that
Hide
we
kids, hide
follow the
swine.
biblical scripture. I'm tired of these semantic arguments with
Oh, don't
things
make
that
it
you
You're a
feel.
sicko, buddy. You're a sicko.
Yeah,
Ain't no way around it.
Wait a minute.
Y'all
You're a
don't
sicko,
tell me
my guy.
that. God don't tell me
One
that.
mic, no, one mic,
I'm
one mic.
tired of listening to these circular arguments
You want to have
about
sex with
feelings.
kids? That gets
Jasmine, hold on.
So there's also too, I can tell. I don't know if this is like an intelligence thing. I've felt this before. This thing that he's doing, I've felt this before. He's frustrated, but he's frustrated about the effort it takes to solve the problem, right? I've seen it before in like when you see two people arguing and then they just be like, all right, let's just agree to disagree. But they don't ever like really hash out the issue. I have felt this before where you just want to shut down and just stop talking. That's the difference. I just shut down and stop talking. He's talking more. But I'm noticing that he's using things like y'all are just arguing circle arguments and things like that. It's like he's not understanding the conversation because he has his foot in the sand, his flag in the sand already. He has already decided that if the law says it's okay, it's okay. He's not here to figure out if the law is right. So now it's frustrating for him to have to sit here and watch people put forth effort to figure out something he feel like he's already solved.
No, you women don't know what adulthood is because you children for life.
So,
And then he says it and just your children for life and just leans back and just like, yeah, now what?
Benny, I'm sorry,
I'm calling
Benny, can you please hold
Benny?
Tank accountable
Call it the cops.
in an example that you just told us that you would hold them accountable?
I mean, bro, first off, like, that is asinine to think that you.
What does the word asinine mean? Is that semantics or is it biblical?
You, nigga, that's you. Asinine means you.
Asinine is semantics.
That's gotta wait.
What does asinine mean? It's taught by a slave master that you claim to oppress, but you follow the white supremacy that you claim to hate.
Sure, I agree with you on that. But here's the thing about it, like,
So now we're just hearing keywords and like vocabulary from I don't know, back when I was in college, Dr. Umar was big. It's just honestly, it's what he's saying is not addressing the argument. He's trying to kind of just attack the speaker, which is Sir in the Blue here. Anton asked Sir in the Blue to hold him accountable, basically saying, all right, since everybody thinks that somebody like Little Tay is a victim, let's hold accountable all the people that sign up for her OnlyFans, or people like that would sign up for her OnlyFans, like Sir here, because it's legal, right? And so he's asking him to hold him accountable, hold Mr. Tank accountable, and he called him asinine. When he called him asinine, Mr. Tank was like, you're only using the word asinine because white men taught you that word. Okay, so what's the problem with that argument? The problem with that argument is that if a white man taught you the definition of a word, does the definition of the word change? So now we got to figure out if he believes he's asinine and just doesn't like that a white man made that word, or if he disagrees with whether or not he's asinine, but he's not explaining that part. So that's why it's important to kind of be able to look through that, because he's very loud. He's using keywords like white supremacy, which is not in this conversation. We're talking about a young Asian woman selling her body on OnlyFans potentially to older men. We're not talking about white supremacy. So he brought that up, and we don't know why, but it's because he didn't like the word asinine being used to identify him.
Can't say biblical because we have advanced our way of thinking. Just like in biblical times, the average age was 30.
And that's one of the points I made earlier. We have advanced our way of thinking. So for example, we used to use swords. How many people in your life own a sword for protection? Not because it's a collectible from World of War or Skyrim. No, like they actually have a sword that they clean and maintain in order to protect themselves from day-to-day life. No, they don't. They probably don't. You probably know no one that does that. And so what this man is failing to understand is that the world has these principles, like the one we're exploring today, don't make sense of the devil. But there's not a real, red-skinned man with horns that you're trying to solve puzzles with, right? It's a play on words. It's for you to understand that there's a principle there that you're supposed to keep with you. And the principle here is that, okay, you need to be smart enough to understand that there are things that are just bad in the world, and you just should not participate in them unless you want what comes with it. Mr. Tank here is not addressing that point because he believes in the base level logic of if something is allowed, then it should be allowed, right? Which is an argument by logic's point, but it's not one that he can truly apply to his life, because there are many things in his personal life that he has or will choose to change simply because they exist. He's not going to just allow them to be. He's going to say, okay, things like violence against, the people I love, I'm not just going to allow that because, let's say, it's the law of the land. I'm not just going to do that, right? If it was legal for us to just punch his grandma, we're not going to punch people's grandmas. That's not cool. We're never going to do that, right? So he's not going to, I don't think he truly believes that logic. I think he's arguing it because it is logical, but it's not something that he's going to truly be able to apply. And I don't know what this is called. I'm probably going into something deeper, but I think that's something that you probably got to go to school for to figure out that you're doing. Like, you got to kind of realize that, okay, I'm thinking a certain way. Let me adjust things. Or maybe have conversations like this where people challenge your thinking, because he's meeting a lot of resistance from almost everybody here. But I think because of that, he feels ambushed. And so he's not receiving the fact that you shouldn't be trying to deal with 12-year-old girls, no matter who's telling you it's okay. I think it's not clicking for him because he's seeing so many people tell him he's wrong. And maybe it's inner child or something. I don't know. But maybe he's just like lashing out because of emotions. And he could be just talking to a camera, so he's not feeling the physical human empathy of children who are 12 years old. He's not really feeling that reaction. He's just kind of arguing to a screen. So this is why it's important to kind of like flesh out the principles you have. He may not have the principle of there's a cost to everything in his head. He may think that there is probably no cost to whatever the law of the land is.
People didn't live past the age of 35. You're considered an old man at 35 in biblical times. So are we supposed to still adapt those same things? We believe the world is flat.
Not true.
Like, do we still supposed to believe that the world is flat?
Is this your way of holding him accountable?
Jesus
No,
Christ.
but what I'm saying is,
Hold him accountable.
Now, right here, Anton has a great point, because I see this a lot on the news. When news networks show us like crazy crimes and like horrible, sad news and stuff like that, they tend to start to angle from Mr. Benny's point here. What Benny was doing was what he did earlier in the beginning of the video. He started asking questions as if you know the answer to the questions. He knows the answer to the questions, but it's just crazy that you're not saying it out loud, right? And so the problem that Benny doesn't know he's having right now is that he's not saying the answers. He's not telling this man he's wrong. He's trying to lead this man to his own thinking, misunderstanding that the man he's talking to has already made his mind up. You're not arguing with somebody who's, like, if you were in sales, this is not a warm call. This is a cold call. He is not trying to buy anything from you. And matter of fact, you called him in the middle of dinner. He's not trying to have this conversation with you, but yet you keep presenting questions to him that if he were to actually answer them, those of which you're not providing, you're not going to like the answers. So you might as well just either present the answers and change him by force, meaning like, look, you got to think this way, or you don't make sense of the devil.
it's foolish to think that and promote
Taking guys like this. So I just want to make sure that we on the same page.
Listen, you can't have these thoughts. That is crazy to think that.
Okay, so he finally said it. He said, listen, you can't have these thoughts. So now we get to see, I guess you could say, the crux of the issue. So now, again, we're no longer talking about this little Asian girl who turned 18 and made $1 million with her branding agency. We're not talking about that anymore. We're now talking about one of the guys that thinks it's all right because it's legal, and then another guy who thinks it's a shameful act. And the guy who thinks it's shameful just said, hey, you should just think it's shameful. How many of you in the comments is going to think that's going to work? How many of you think is going to convince this man to just see the light and then suddenly resent all these religious claims he was throwing out, all these white supremacy claims he probably learned from years ago. How effective do you think that argument is going to be? Now, again, this is important for musicians to understand because you're going to be presented with conversations like this in real quick time. Like, people are going to throw shit at you, like I was saying about the royalty statements, but people are going to throw conversations like this in an interview. And you're going to have an answer. They're going to be like, hey, did you see Lil Tay turn 18? And you're going to think in your head, probably, if you're one of these dudes, you're probably going to think like, hey, yeah, it's legal. And you're not going to realize what that just did to you because he doesn't. This man right here has no clue what that means. And if he does, he doesn't care, which means the consequences that come with it, he's going to have to deal with. He can't complain. So when he said 12 years old is cool because the law of the land says so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people gasped. Probably 8, all of them gasped in the air, and he acted like it was nothing.
So I can't stand on the Bible?
You are dead ass wrong for thinking that it's okay to have the law of the land being 12.
And he said it again, and the dude is not budging. He said, I can't stand on the word. So he feels that they both are contending now. At this point, there's no debate being had. So it makes it just, a fight. You're just watching two people crash into each other.
You can't stay on the gospel?
You can stay on the gospel, but at the same time, what are we talking about saying that the land of the land should be 12 years old? So let me ask you this. You have a daughter that's 12. A man that's 25, 30 comes and say, hey, the law of the land is 12. I want to marry your daughter. You going to just let her just go away with this man and let him do whatever? Because that
So before he answers that question, this is kind of what I meant about the problem with thinking the law of the land just having overall, protocol. It's problematic. I don't think he will say yes to this question. I don't think he will. I didn't think he'd say yes to the first one, but
that's his wife. You also hold on. If you want to go,
he says no. Okay, so his answer is no. If the law of the land says 12 years old is the legal age for a man, let's say in this instance, for a man to marry your 12-year-old daughter at age 30, 40, 50 years old, the man who's presenting that as an option wouldn't go through with it. So he would allow for that law to be for your daughter, my daughter, Lil Tay, but not his.
Wait a minute.
You want to go biblical?
Wait a minute. You asked the question. Do you want me to answer it, or do you want me to?
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna ask you the second question. I'll let you go ahead. Do you also believe that as those times that women were property? Do you want your woman, your aunt, your niece to be property as well?
A woman is property.
Okay, so the second question, let him slither out of the first one because the property point doesn't really matter as much as it does to whether or not you'll let somebody marry your daughter, or would you marry your daughter off at 12 years old?
Oh, okay.
Because
yeah, I'm not really too mad about the property thing. I'm more because I mean, if a grown woman, that's what we're talking about here, if a grown woman wants to be someone's property, it's a totally different conversation than a 12-year-old.
when a man follows faith, there's a hierarchy. That means she has an order. And I don't mean she's property. I don't mean that she's property, meaning like she's like some land that you purchase.
I don't know why.
I mean she's a property of God. She's a child of Yah. She follows a woman follows a man of faith that follows a scripture verbatim.
Mind tank.
Verbatim.
Wait.
And he's not even like, I'm not even that, religious, but he's not quoting a thing. Like, he's just saying stuff. I don't even know if any of that is like a coherent like quote. Like, he's just saying things. Like, again, it's just vocabulary. Like when he said white supremacy, you just imagined cone-shaped white hoods. You don't even know what that looks like. You don't know what white supremacy looks like with his context. You may have your own, but the problem is you having your own is that it's not his. And he's just throwing it at you so your brain goes a certain place and allows the conversation to just make itself. This is why you don't want to try and make sense of the devil, because he's not even coherent as far as what he's saying. You may think he is, but if you were to slowly, piece by piece, follow what he's saying this. 12-year-old girls are free game as long as the law of the land says so, based on a religious text, that of which I personally would not follow with my own daughter, but I do advocate for against what we do today. So again, just so we follow, this man is saying 12-year-old girls are free game for marriage if the government or law of the land says so, based on this religious text I've read, that of which I will not apply to my own daughter. So let's go further. If you don't see why I'm laughing, because maybe you don't, you're probably typing in the comments like, I don't get it. Does that make sense to me? The reason that doesn't make sense to me is because I wouldn't advocate against little Tay turning 18 on OnlyFans and doing that or whatever, to then say, let's make it legal for us to get with 12-year-olds, okay? Because that's the conversation we're having. He's bringing up the biblical text, white supremacy, and what was the other thing he said? I can't even remember. It was just so many words. He's bringing up these vocabulary terms to make you think about those instances instead of this little Asian girl making a decision that is legal, okay? This little Asian girl has nothing to do with white supremacy. This little Asian girl has nothing to do with his religious beliefs. This little Asian girl has a family and they're helping her make these decisions, okay? This is an educated person. Now, again, why is this important to musicians and artists and things like that? Because this little Asian girl is the star. Just like this man here, she may not realize what she's doing. And she may not have the principles to make sense of what her parents are allowing her to go through. She may not have the principles to make sense of how she received or at least earned that $1 million. Because if you were to let her tell it to the public, this is a good thing. But if it's such a good thing, why is it controversial? Because nobody cares that, you know, the farmer's market's opening on Thursday. That's a great thing for your community. Why aren't you guys screaming on TikTok about that running down the street? Why am I not reporting on that right now? So him using these vocabulary terms are a distraction that I think he's not aware of. I think he's emotionally attached to control and freedom that he's lost sight of what that truly looks like. Because if it was true control, he would apply the world he sees for his daughter to this situation. He wouldn't be so simple with what he's doing because he's relieving control to the law of the land, and he's doing it intentionally. And when you do it intentionally, you harm 12-year-old little girls who get taken advantage of.
For a second, because let me help you to understand something. I really want you to take this into consideration.
I'm willing to listen.
To say that the Bible says follow the laws of the land does not absolve you from also holding yourself higher to a higher accountability. I want you to understand that. The laws of the land is the minimum expectation of what you are supposed. It's an and. It's not a end all be all. Okay. So let's just say, for example, if I say I'm supposed to treat somebody nice, because we talking biblically, right? I'm supposed to treat somebody nice, but then at the same time, I am still supposed to obey the laws of the land. So the Bible specifically speaks against homosexuality. However, here in the United States of America, you are allowed to marry as a gay person.
Now, a lot of people will find that controversial. But this is where I think Anton has actually presented a very, very good chess piece to the board. Whereas I honestly didn't think he was going to take the homosexual angle. But if you were to, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Yeah. So if you were to take Mr. Tank's logic here, let's try and flesh it out. I'm slowly clicking. If you were to take Mr. Tank's logic, you follow the religious text by the T. And then if you follow what Anton just presented, the religious text has an and to it, meaning that you're not supposed to just behave on your base level instincts. you hear a lot of women say this, where like you present to them that guys like multiple women, or they'll cheat to be with multiple women. And I guess that's the bigger issue, is that they'll cheat. And so women will say, well, I don't see men that low, which is kind of similar to this whole overall conversation, right? So the issue they're running into is that they understand what you're saying, but they think you should too, but operate better than. Okay, that's the and that Anton here is describing when he's speaking about the Bible. He's saying that though the Bible says you should follow the law of the land, there's an and in addition to that, meaning follow the law of the land, but also don't do something that clearly goes against what you think is right. Okay, and so diving further deeper into that then this is where I think the controversy lies, and this is why it's important to kind of like speak through this and like write things. This is why we have Bibles and constitutions and laws and things like that, is because it helps you kind of like think. And this is also why I say there should be an incentive to go back and look at laws and use the new fresh minds that come with it. But what's happening now is that Mr. Tank's base level logic of like just follow the book, right, is now being met with, well, follow the book, but have some kind of like improvement upon it, right? Anton is now presenting that, okay, let's say you follow the book to a T, but the country you live in goes directly against that book. Okay. And so Mr. Tank's example is that 12-year-old is considered an adult, so it goes along with the book or the times that the book was written in. Anton is saying that, well, right now, the country that he lives in goes directly against the same book that he reads. How do you expect him to handle that? Do you expect him to participate in what the law of the land says, like Mr. Tank was presenting? If the girls are 12, I should participate? Or should I hold myself to a higher standard while still following the book I read? So let's see what he says.
Just because I am obeying the laws of the land does not mean that I should not hold myself to a higher standard as a saint or as a person that considers himself as a Christian. And I am not supposed to be in the world, or I'm not supposed to be, I'm of the world, but I'm not in the world. So if you're
and that's one of the points that I think many musicians are going to struggle with. Like, you're going to be in situations where your fans are going to be doing illicit substances. Your fans are going to be irresponsible. Maybe your other bandmates are going to be irresponsible. Does that mean you should be too? Should you join in? Should you help, make the situation worse, maybe, Should you be the one to do that? And I think Anton lays it out perfectly, in that you should not really use that as an option. Like, it should almost never be an option to just be like, yeah, I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing.
Using the Bible in order to be able to justify bad behavior, I'm telling you that it's a bad argument. And just because you can do something does not mean that you're supposed to do something. And this is why you have to really get understanding in the Bible. Just because God gave grace and allowed for certain things to happen in the Old Testament does not mean that he thought that it was the right thing to do. It just means that that's exactly what it was. It was called grace. That's why.
So I'm gonna go back and listen to that one more time.
In the Bible, just because God gave grace and allowed for certain things to happen in the Old Testament does not mean that he thought that it was the right thing to do. It just means that that's exactly what it was. It was called grace. That's why.
Oh, so okay, that's interesting. So let's use Lil Tay for an example. I believe personally that Lil Tay's experience with social media and honestly her entertainment is a tad negative. Like, she's got a lot of notoriety, but I would assume that if I were to let her tell it, she would have a little bit more control, right? But her experience has to be her experience. In order for us to learn from this, in order for us to see it, in order for these 9 people to have this conversation, in order for me to make this video on some like videoception shit, right? That's called grace, meaning that I'm not, well, not me, but like the events that are going to unfold for this little girl are not going to be stopped. They're not going to be ended. And little girls like her, they're not going to be ended because we just give grace for the fact that this is what it is. Now, again, I'm just using my own understanding. This may change later. But what I think Anton is getting at is that doesn't mean that you should then enforce her experience. So if, let's rewind, right? Let's say this girl's 17 and it's 11:59 and she's about to turn 18. You should tell her no, that she offered a subscription to her OnlyFans at 18 years old. That's what Anton is saying. You should tell her no. That's pretty much what everybody's saying. You should tell her no. And the reason you should tell her no is because if all of you acted on that accord, you would be functioning within the book you claim to be following. You would not be participating in this girl's traumatic experience, that of which she's intentionally participating in. So now when you tell her no, I believe this is what he's saying. This is where the grace begins. So now she's surrounded by people who essentially are treating her properly and has almost no choice but to either get better or to just fade away, which is a lighter version of what it could be, right? So I think that's what Mr. Tank here is missing. I think Mr. Tank here is saying, if you can't beat them, join them, in a nutshell. And that's problematic because, again, when Mr. Beanie here presented the argument, would you allow your daughter to go through, let's just say what Lil Tay is going through. He says no. He says no, I wouldn't allow my daughter at 12 years old to be the legal age of consent, okay? But for some reason, he's arguing for it.
Nobody, until the Comforter came, until Jesus died for people's sins, nobody could actually make it into heaven. And there was only like two people. I think it was Elijah, right? Because he was called up by the Spirit. And I think it was Elijah, right? Those were the only two that was called up prior to Jesus actually giving the Comforter.
That's not true. Abraham.
And making it available for the Jew and the Gentile alike. So let me just, the reason that I said that is because there's a lot of people that actually try to use, I think it was Enoch. Yeah, y'all right. It's a lot of people that try to justify bad behavior from the Bible. 12, you know better, I know better, and 12 years old is diabolical, bro.
And that's a great point. A lot of people try to use religious texts to justify bad behavior. And we may do another video on what is bad, because the idea that you're going to do any of the things that were in the time that the Bible was written is kind of, I would say, misleading. Because again, he said he wouldn't even participate in the 12-year-old legal age thing, which means that he knows, just like Anton said, he knows that that's wrong. If not wrong, he doesn't like it. So it doesn't matter about it being legal. It's about now, okay, are you setting the, well, I guess maybe this doesn't matter to him, but it's really a question of what kind of man would not set the precedent for other 12-year-old little girls to be, I guess, protected from what he thinks is wrong.
Shape or form. A child, as a matter of fact, I think that the age should be higher.
So, and that's kind of what I just said. Like, Anton is somebody who thinks it should be higher than 18. Why he would say that, I don't know. If this man who would not allow his daughter to be legal age at 12, I don't know if he would disagree with that based on the things that we've seen here. If he were to disagree with that, that would prove to me that he's arguing just for the sake of arguing. He's not really making a point. But if you wanted to protect 12-year-old little girls from being taken advantage of, out of all the things you know of 12-year-old little girls, why wouldn't you make it higher? Why wouldn't you be against them being the legal age? So that's just kind of the thing that Anton's presenting here.
You got to remember that laws are made by man. It's not necessarily made by the people in this country. They elect the leaders that ultimately make the laws that we abide by. And so because a person's brain, because a woman's brain isn't even fully developed into her mid-20s, we should never consider her to be an adult. And this is one of the reasons why we keep our daughters with us.
And that's a great point that I think, like I was saying, I don't think this man is going to disagree with. There's no way he's going to disagree with this after all the things that he's done. Maybe against what he said, but after all the things that he's done, when we presented him to apply it to his own life, there's no way he would disagree with that. Now, the greater point is, the reason Anton is saying what he's saying is because it seems like he's trying to add a level of buffer between the nature of a young person to the world that is ready for them. which is kind of what I keep reiterating, to not make sense of the devil. He's not trying to change the world for 12-year-old little girls. He's not making the world safer for 12-year-old little girls to move on their own. He's making it safer for 12-year-old little girls to grow up into women. Okay? At least with the mindset, right? Same with little boys. Like, it doesn't make sense to just unleash little boys into the world. It makes way more sense to help little boys grow into men. You see, it's a different approach. It's a different mindset. But again, I don't think this man is going to disagree. So let's see.
Why when you marry your daughter off is cover to cover, right? You give your daughter away because the man is supposed to vet. You're right. You're right about one thing. They are our property, but that means that they're our responsibility also. And so it's cover to cover. You give your daughter away. And this is what's wrong with the United States of America, is because everybody are choosing for themselves.
And I agree with
you. I have a hard time believing. And I think that one of the reasons why you got this diabolical mindset is because you don't have children.
Here we go, diabolical mindset.
It's a fucking diabolical mindset.
The insults,
the child,
the shame,
really just,
the guilt,
it's a diabolical
the need
mindset.
to be right, sir. First of all, sir, let's stop you right here, because you're not being biblical by the way you're talking to me. You don't know me. You're insulting me.
So I'm not sure if he disagrees or not. He was about to say he agrees, but I was waiting for him to kind of stand on it.
That's not grace.
How did I insult you?
That's not faith. You just said a word. You call me diabolical, sir.
I said it's a diabolical mind.
So right now he's doing what he did earlier about the whole with the conversation he had with Mr. Beanie here. He's fixated on diabolical or being called diabolical, when that's not the important part. The important part is whether or not you agree with 12 years old being a bad age for legal consent, and whether or not you should raise the age. We don't care about whether or not you really have a diabolical mindset. It's just convenient that now we got to talk about this instead of the question.
Who are you to decide what's diabolical? You're not the creator. Who are you, sir? Who are you? You worship Porsche. You worship idolatry at its finest, sir.
And we're here again. This is keywords, like he's naming car brands, idolatry. We're not addressing the question, which was whether or not this man talking right now believes that 12-year-olds should be the legal age. Like that's why I said I don't know if he knows he's not addressing it. I think he's so amped up to yell at the camera because there's no real human in the room with him. I think it's not really hitting him the kind of energy that he needs to really bring.
I don't worship objects in the ways of this world.
Jazz.
I live separate from this world. I follow the word verbatim, sir. What do you follow? You follow money.
This is my point.
You follow greed. You follow envy. You follow brands. You follow all the idolatry things. You think you.
I got you, big dog. Give me a second.
And at this point, this is what I was saying. He's already planting his flag in the sand. He's honestly not addressing anyone. Like he's not saying things in hopes for a response in order to debate. He's just saying things. We don't even know if what he's saying is true about Anton. Like let's say he finishes speaking. We still don't know if what he said was right. So that's why it's important to kind of be aware when you're talking in real time, to be like, okay, I just said this. What do they think of that? Let me respond to that. He's not doing any of that. He's just yelling at the camera.
So Jazz, this is my point. You're never going to understand somebody who has a reprobate mind and has a diabolical mindset. You can try to hold these people accountable. You can say whatever it is that you want to say. You can go back and forth with them all day. But the reality is that we need to identify them. And then when you see something happen, you need to lock them up. But until then, the only thing that you can do is try to protect your seed.
You know what the craziest part about that whole sentiment? I should play it again, but we don't need to. The craziest part about that whole sentiment that he said, I'll just recap. He said basically, because Jazz was one of the people alongside Mr. Beanie here that felt as if you could change the mindset of people who were crazy. You could change the mindset of the men who wanted to sign up for Lil Tay's OnlyFans. And they got shown in real time that this is one of the people that, it may not be something as particular as this, but this is one of the people whose mind you can't change. They got shown that in real time. Now, the key thing to take away from this is that entire time Anton was speaking, he was screaming on mute. Yeah, so when I'm pointing out the things I'm saying about him believing what he's saying, applying his own argument, and listening to other people, you can be angry and excited through all of that. But it makes no sense when it doesn't get any progress. Like if he was angry and like every point he said was like hitting, it was like, damn, he's right. Damn, he's right. Damn, he's right. He's cussing a lot and he's yelling, but he's correct. Then we wouldn't really have a problem here. But he's just yelling. He's not substantiating his argument to say like, okay, this is why I'm right. He's just saying I'm right because my argument exists. And the issue with that is that it doesn't debate anything. You just it's like your grandpa arguing about colors. Like, okay, grandpa, like, all right.
You can say whatever it is that you want to say.
Look at him go.
You can go back and forth with him all day. But the reality is that we need to identify him. And then when you see something happen, you need to lock him up. But until then, the only thing that you can do is try to protect your seed. Now that we've identified it, for example, I would never let my daughter around this guy. I would also probably guess, and this is not saying that it's true, I would probably also guess that since, remember what he said earlier, he's a worldwide traveler and all of this other type of stuff? I would probably also guess that he's probably indulged a little bit.
Yeah, and all the signs and the clues are there, but without him making a real argument, he can't defend himself because he looks crazy right now. He's just yelling at the screen, muted. But this is kind of like how people go to jail in court. It's how people get messed up and stuff like that in the court. But again, why is this important to musicians? Because this could be you one day, right here. This could be you screaming at the top of your lungs that you're right, and everybody is just laughing at you. And the issue that they're running into is that they're not receiving that they're being laughed at. Like, I would be quiet as hell right now, just like, oh, okay, I understand, okay. Just learning. But he's not trying to. He just kept standing on it. Like, even if you had like rebuttals, like present them, but receive. Even if you have like, all right, I still think that's wrong. You got to be able to say, I still think that's wrong. Here's why. If you think it's wrong and you can't say is why, you know what you got to do. You got to be quiet because you can't prove it.
What's indulge mean? And like
and getting involved and paying for bots in different countries and shit like that.
I don't think he realized he's muted.
Telling you. So this is my point. What you want me to try to understand this nigga?
Right.
You think that Benny could hold this nigga accountable?
Benny,
dog, he's still yelling at the camera. What the fuck?
accountable, Benny. What happened?
I was for the record. I was gonna say, Anton, was that you holding him accountable or checking him? That you did a great job.
To correct him on his biblical standard because you wasn't able to do so. I don't like people to try to make fun of the Bible or try to use the Bible to justify bad behavior.
Oh
I agree. I'm not well versed in the Bible as you are. You're right. No, but that is a great job of checking him because he's still going.
So and even in your example, Benny, you say you know people. I would never hang with a nigga like this.
Who said I hang with people? Just because you know people.
Okay, this is the part that I think I wanted to focus on. In general, only because we had to get through the whole conversation so you see it in real time, because a lot of people do feel the same way. A lot of the other people on this panel, they do feel that the problems in the world are because you're not having the conversation, or you just gotta, change people's mind, and they just need the right motivation to do the right thing. They explained to this man several times that 12-year-old little girls is not okay to marry. And he screamed at this muted camera for about 45 seconds straight. I'm assuming saying that he's correct. So the thing you're going to need to convince him are not words, if you get my drift. So now you're getting into where Anton is saying, okay, I'm going to not use words anymore to deal with this guy. I'm going to leave, or what's the word? Exile this man. You don't get to be around me, my women, my things, my place, my friends, none of that, because you think this way about them. Mr. Benny here, he's not really presenting that same sentiment. He's presenting the sentiment as, I don't think anything is wrong with this man feeling the way he feels until something happens. Then I will exile him from my network. Then I will shame him. Because the problem that I see most people have is that, let's say you just went around was just like, I hate fat people. You just started just saying that, right? It's not nice. It's very, very rude and oftentimes inappropriate. But if you started to lay out the reasons you're saying it and wrote it down on a paper, you'll find people that agree with you. The problem is that you just can't go around saying these things out loud without people feeling some kind of shame or some urge to do something. And that's what Benny here is trying to avoid. He's trying to avoid that sentiment of making Mr. Tank here feel bad about his beliefs. Because remember, if they didn't bring up certain topics or certain things, he wouldn't be a part of this conversation. He wouldn't be screaming at the muted screen. He wouldn't be as passionate about the topic. But if he was talking about, let's say, credit cards, this conversation probably wouldn't go the same. It would be a lot more calm. It could probably be a lot more listening, a little bit more respectful. He'd know he's muted. So Benny wouldn't have any urge to shame him. He wouldn't have any flag to look for, no red flag. So I think that's the problem here, is that Anton's kind of presenting like, no, this is kind of just a flag that I think I'm just going to wave. Like, it's just a red flag. So any dude who thinks like this is a problem. And Benny's like, I don't really do that because I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
You say you know people. I would never hang with a nigga like this.
Who said I hang with people? Just because you know people.
These type of people ain't.
So that's kind of why I'm saying what I'm saying. He's saying just because you know people. That's the whole point. Like, you know a person that thinks like this and you don't shame them until something happens. That's the issue. And again, it's not about like, putting your hands on people. You just got to leave them alone, because in this country, unfortunately, they have the freedom to think that way. It's only unfortunate because it's nasty. It's not really unfortunate because it's, something we need to like really harm. It's just thoughts. But because he thinks this way, if you allow him to do it legally, he will participate because he just said he would. But he wouldn't do it for his own daughter. So that's where the problem lies. There's a lot of wish-washiness, and then there's a lot of enabling from the people around without actual outright shame for the behavior.
My circle. I identify.
Who said they were in my circle?
Okay, Benny. All right. Listen, here's the fact of the matter. You failed at holding him accountable and changing his mindset and all of that other bullshit. And the fact of the matter is, when I personally see people like this, they scare me, bro. Very few people in the world actually scare me. And the one thing that I've always believed is that kids are off limits, bro. Kids is just fucking off limits. Like,
I agree.
There ain't no coming back from that. It ain't nothing that we can come together about. We not trying to understand motherfuckers that think like this.
You just cussing ninjas and talk disrespectful to
Give
people.
me a second, big dog.
He tried to unmute and jump back in the conversation. That's hilarious, Mom. But I think that'll be enough for the conversation as far as today. We went pretty long, but this was a good video to break down, especially for musicians, because there's going to be people you meet in your life, and there's going to be experiences and opportunities. You may be Lil Tay, maybe not at 18, maybe at like 22, 23, 24, 25. You may be in a situation where your team, your brand, your crew is setting up a deal or something like that, and you think it's going to be the great thing just because it's legal. And that might not be enough to get you what you're asking for in the music industry. You might actually want some respect. Because honestly, think about it. Lil Tay made $1 million at 18 years old. You know how easy it is to make $1 million apparently at 18 years old? Like, if you're going to say that, then it's like, all right, so now what do you do, Lil Tay? Like, Lil Tay is, if she has a good, healthy life, respectably, she's going to wind up being like 70, 80 years old if she takes care of her money and herself. What does this $1 million mean, to anybody? Even like myself and most average people, you've probably touched a good amount of money. You just blew it. You just spent it all. You ate it all, door dashed it, went into car notes, the bank ate it. Maybe your house ate it. Maybe your mom ate it. Your mom kept asking you for bill money. Maybe your kids ate it. So this is a conversation that's gone beyond Lil Tay, because we start to talk about the people that participate. Why would Lil Tay do this or think it's right? Why would her parents set her up to do this on that particular site, OnlyFans? And then why would anybody want to participate in what this little girl is offering on on OnlyFans? And I'm calling her a little, she's an adult at 18, but I'm calling her a little girl because she's marketed as a child. She's not marketed as fully grown, you know, seductress Lil Tay. Like, no, they market her as pretty much a teenager. So let me know what you think, y'all. If you like this conversation, this is a Musician Talks with DameSmiff, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.